Hey, welcome to The Explainer. So today we're going to dive into a really powerful text about personal growth. And we're zeroing in on a concept called Step 11. Now, I know this is a topic that can bring up a lot of questions, especially if you're, a bit of a skeptic. And what's great is our source material tackles those questions head on.
All right, so here's the step itself, word for word. It's all about two main things, prayer and meditation. But look at the goal. It's not just to do them, it's to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him. And here's the really important part. You're only praying for two things, to know what that power's will is for you and to have the strength to actually do it. But what if you don't buy into any of this in the first place?
And yeah, there it is. The big question, the elephant in the room, right? For a lot of us, the words prayer, meditation, and especially God can be immediate deal breakers. This is usually the very first hurdle, and the source material doesn't shy away from it at all. It goes right at it. So, a lot of us who think of ourselves as pretty logical, active people, we can look at these practices with some serious skepticism. The source material really gets that we tend to see them as, these mysterious skills that are only for priests or monks, or maybe just something that's not really essential for living a practical day-to-day life. And look, the text is super clear about this. These are not small objections. They're real and they're deeply felt. There's that rebellion against the very idea of submitting to anything. There are powerful logical arguments that seem to disprove the whole idea. And of course, there's the evidence all around us. Sickness, injustice, terrible accidents. You might even see a program of recovery as a kind of miracle, but still pull back from the very idea of prayer itself. And this quote, wow, it just nails the core issue the text is pointing to. It's not always about a lack of evidence. Sometimes it's a flat-out refusal to even try the experiment. It's that fear that a new experience might just blow up a whole worldview that, frankly, we've gotten pretty comfortable with. So what's the takeaway here? Well, the text isn't trying to argue into belief. It's not about winning a philosophical debate. Instead, it just proposes an experiment. It basically says that your own direct, personal experience is the only thing that's ever going to overcome those logical roadblocks. The only way to know if it works is to, actually try it. Okay, so if we're going to try this experiment, we probably need a different way to look at it, right? We need to shift our perspective. And that's exactly what the source gives us. It offers a totally new frame for what prayer and meditation could actually be. So instead of thinking of this as some kind of religious duty, the text makes this amazing comparison. It says prayer and meditation are like air, food, or sunshine. Think about it. We wouldn't refuse to breathe. We wouldn't refuse to eat. The argument is that when we turn away from these spiritual practices, we're basically starving our minds and our emotions of something just as vital. Now, this is really interesting. The source takes this idea of imagination and flips it on its head. For a lot of people who've struggled, imagination was a destructive force. It was used to create fantasies, to escape reality. But the argument here is that the imagination itself wasn't the problem. The problem was what it was aimed at. After all, you can't build a house without first imagining the plan, right? That's constructive imagination. Okay, so with that new way of thinking, where do we even start? How do you actually do this? Well, if prayer and meditation are like sunshine for the soul, the text suggests that meditation is that first step you take to walk out into the light. So the text gives us this prayer from St. Francis as a potential starting point. And the key here is you don't have to believe every single word of this. The point is that these are the thoughts of someone who clearly went through some major emotional turmoil and came out the other side with a completely new, constructive vision for how to live. It's like a blueprint. And the way you're supposed to use this, it's super simple, really practical. It's not about analyzing it or debating it. The idea is just to read it. Slowly, let the words sink in. For just a moment, drop all your arguments against it. And then just rest. Rest quietly with the ideas, almost like you're just sitting on a warm, sunlit beach, just breathing it all in. And this isn't just some abstract, feel-good exercise with no real payoff. The text is very, very clear that this practice has real practical benefits. And the very first one you can expect to see? A greater sense of emotional balance, stability. All right, let's switch gears a little and talk about prayer, because it really builds on this idea of meditation. The source defines it simply. It's just raising your heart and mind to God. But what we ask for, and maybe more importantly, how we ask for it, that turns out to be everything.
Okay, you're gonna want to pay attention here because this might be the single most important idea in the whole text. Our natural instinct, our temptation, is to treat prayer like we're placing an order. We tell God exactly what we want, the specific solution to our specific problem. But the path suggested here is the complete opposite. It's about letting go of our own answers and instead just asking for two things: guidance and the strength to follow it.
And the text is really blunt about the dangers of getting this wrong. When we start demanding specific outcomes, it's so easy to mistake our own wishful thinking for some kind of divine guidance. And that can lead us to start forcing our will on people and situations, creating all kinds of chaos, all while feeling totally justified that we're doing God's work.
So how do we avoid that trap? Well, the text gives us this one simple, humble phrase to add to everything: if it be thy will. Just adding that little qualification changes everything. It turns a demand into a request. It aligns us with a bigger picture, instead of trying to bend the universe to our own tiny plans. So what's the payoff? I mean, if you actually do this, if you stick with this experiment of meditation and this different kind of prayer, what can you actually expect to happen? Well, the text promises some really tangible, life-altering results.
And we're not talking about vague, wishy-washy ideas here. The source presents these as real, lived experiences reported by tons of people. We're talking about finding a strength you didn't know you had, accessing a wisdom that feels like it's beyond you, a kind of peace that holds up even when things get tough, and maybe most importantly, a deep, profound sense that you actually belong here.
And it all comes down to this really interesting paradox, doesn't it? It's in the act of letting go, of surrendering our demands and our perfectly detailed plans, that we finally open ourselves up to receive the very help and guidance we were looking for all along.
And when that happens, it's not just a small change. It's a fundamental shift in how you experience life. That feeling of being lost, alone, scared, adrift in a hostile universe, it starts to be replaced by a quiet knowledge that you're no longer lost, you're no longer alone, and you do have a purpose. Which leaves us with this one last pretty big question from the text. What happens when our perspective shifts so much that we start to see things like truth, justice, and love not as just nice human ideas, but as the real, fundamental, eternal forces in the universe? The text suggests that when you catch even a glimpse of that, it changes everything. And the chaos and the drama of everyday human life, it just doesn't seem to have the same power over you anymore.